Live tonight from the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway in Concord, North Carolina. We say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to the last race of the round of 12 of the 2021 SimSeats RealSimRacing Cup Series playoffs. Well, as always, we're happy that you're spending your Monday night with us here on RaceSpot TV. Or as always, with our producer, Luis downstairs, myself, Evan Pasoko, happy to be joined tonight by Justin Prince once more in the RaceSpot TV booth, filling in for our friend Nolan Rempel. And Justin, this is a very critical race. So after tonight, we'll know the 8 drivers that will continue on their journey to fight for a championship. We've got a 3-way tie at the cut line and a couple of drivers needing wins coming into historically one of the most bonkers road courses on the schedule.
That's an understatement when it comes to the Charlotte Roval in the expectations for this race tonight. But the pressure is definitely on, especially with some of those drivers amongst that tie, teammates to one another. But it's also going to be critical to keep in mind that some of the drivers in the must-win scenarios, like Matt Danson, are very strong at road courses. So there is a strong chance that the entire round of 8 gets shuffled about by the end of the evening, on top of the potential of some drivers who can play spoiler.
Well, let's take a look at those points coming into this evening. So, Daniel Eberhardt, courtesy of a race win a couple of weeks ago in the round of 12 opener at Las Vegas, is the only driver locked in. And you can see that big red box around the cut line for the top 8 positions. Bowie, Phillip, Rabel, all tied. If you remember, at the end of the round of 16, we had a tie between Casto and McBride that had to go to the 4th layer of tiebreakers to get that decided. We could see that here this evening, Justin, but you mentioned Matt Danson. He finds himself minus 19. Danson is undefeated in the road course races in which he has raced in this year. If he could do this, walk it off with a win, that 3-way tie for 7th instantly becomes a 3-way tie for the last transfer position. So we're going to be monitoring those points all night long, and Danson certainly, I think, in the most pressure-packed race of his RSR career here tonight.
Absolutely, because he's been well known across the iRacing platform as a very strong racer, especially when it comes to the road courses. Whenever there's been official competition, he's been someone you see inside the top 5. Same has been an RSR competition this season, but he's starting off with the right foot. Just now, that time he put in was one of the best, in fact, the best in qualifying just now.
As always, it is single car qualifying here tonight for the Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval. They do have a 10-minute session, a little bit longer than the 5 minutes that are normally allotted for an oval race. And of course, the conversation is going to be about the cuts, but a big play in this championship as we take a look at the number 34 Bowie, Justin, is what we saw last time out at Talladega. It was once again the Altus team dominating on a plate track, but it was Michael Cozy Jr. getting his first career RSR Cup Series win. That's important because notably, he's a non-playoff driver. He was the first non-playoff driver to win a race in these 2021 playoffs. Takes away the opportunity for some of those other drivers who were hoping to get a race win to lock themselves in. There were a lot of names up there that could have certainly used a win, that were in the top 10, but weren't able to navigate it to the checkered flag when it was all said and done. And as we watch Bowie here in qualifying, of course, this is going to be one of those points of contention, that bus stop chicane on the back straightaway. The curbs are a little bit, I don't know if more forgiving is the right way to put it, Justin, but they're not going to tear up your virtual race car like we saw over the weekend with the Cup and Xfinity races, but it is still a critical point where you really can't push it too wide into those zones, and this is a racetrack that's very thin, and I mentioned that it's one of the more bonkers road courses on the calendar. It's also one of the funnest, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a blast to be able to drive around the Charlotte Roval, especially with its tight confines, but also some of the high-speed sections. Keep in mind, though, you mentioned the narrowness of this circuit. It's a pretty tight 1.5 miles in itself when the oval configuration is used. But you talk about the road course sections where it's maybe a car length and a half wide, if not 2 car lengths at the very most. It's difficult to try and make passes around here in turn unless you pressurize a mistake or you're brave enough to send it up the inside. There are several different sections in turn that there's the chance of massive track blockages or attrition zones. If you make a mistake, say in the final chicanes or through the first corner, it can be a very tough situation with that being one of the more active attrition spots tonight, as well as that run up through that bus stop down the back.
And we saw drama, right, with rivalries. That was kind of the big storyline out of yesterday's NASCAR Cup Series race at the Roval. I don't think we have anything quite to that level brewing just yet, but it is a place where there is going to be close quarters racing, and that's going to be an important storyline throughout this one is attrition. As always, in all RSR road course races, there are no full course cautions. So we're going to be looking at about 75 to 80 minutes of race time non-stop. Strategies will have the opportunity to play themselves out. But with that, the clock in qualifying strikes 0. So let's go trackside and take a look at your sim seats starting grid. And Matt Danson, second best in practice. He is on pole in qualifying and will bring us to the green flag alongside the 34 of Brandon Bowie. More playoff drivers on row number 2, Agno Phillip and Andrew Friedosh will start 3rd and 4th. Liam Sheen's P5 and Seth the Merchant, your runner-up from a week ago, is P6.
Jared Winemaster starts in 7th position, a 120.2 in qualifying, with Adam de Blasio to his outside in 8th. Rounding up the top 10, it's Kyle Kammer and Brandon 6. Right behind them, Sam Nieto, one of the drivers in a must-win scenario, 11th position, more than 6/10 off the pole time. Brett McBride amongst that tight battle around 7th or so, currently in 12th.
And continued on down through Cody Harris, who has shown some speed on some of the road course races this year, will find himself 13th alongside Zach Carr. A little bit off from what Carr was. Fastest in practice. Look for him to work through the field. Playoff driver Michael Lariah is going to be alongside RaceSpot's own Arjuna Kankipati. We'll talk with him a little bit later on as he makes his RSR Cup Series debut. They both out-qualified Chris Rabel, and alongside him, Nick Silver in 18th position was the last two of your playoff cars on the grid.
John Casto starts in the 19th position, a part of Keeping It Real alongside Jeremy Miller's 27 machine. Brendan Whitaker starts in 21st with Ross Cato in 22nd. Trey Browning more than 2 seconds off the pole times in 23rd. Joseph Tice in 24th.
And continuing on through the field, David Washington, Chambliss, and William Schmidt will roll through the top 27 positions. Joe Yakes will roll from 28th on a provisional time. And that is a look top to bottom at your starting grid. This Roval configuration, Justin, is a 17-turn, 2.28-mile track that can challenge the best of the drivers and the teams. And, you know, the conversations you hear when NASCAR goes here is compromising on the setups, right? You need a car that's good on the oval parts, but is also good on the infield, and vice versa. The two chicanes are going to be tricky. Well, as course, this is a fixed setup series. Everybody's got the same car they're working with. In sim, it is set to just about 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, same start time as the Cup Series race was yesterday. Weather is realistic and dynamic, so there's only so many things drivers can do to prepare, and really the hard work's going to have to come in this race. One other point I wanted to mention, it was a big field last week at Talladega. Well, the road course may have scared away, Justin, some of the non-playoff guys, so with 28 cars on track, maybe just a little bit more room for your playoff drivers to race around this place.
Absolutely agree with you. And that's to be expected because a lot of drivers seem to be drawn to super speedway racing. The road courses, though, are more skill-based when it comes to being able to drive your way around and in turn adapting to that setup you were mentioning for these competitors today. The main thing to think about, too, though, is you mentioned the time of day. It is 2 times speed when it comes to the time of day process, so it's a little bit quicker compared to some of the air races you would think about. So there's the chance that you may get quicker through some of the temperature changes in turn.
Yeah, this race, half distance of the Cup race, but it'll cover the same time span. There's a look at some of our onboard cameras that we'll be riding with this evening. We've got our Junior up there in the top left-hand corner, Brandon 6, Trey Browning, Matt Danson, and Ross Cato, all strapped in and ready to go as we get set to cut out the next 4 drivers of these playoffs that started not that long ago with 16 championship hopefuls. Sean Casto, Jeremy Miller, Kyle Trudell, and Brian Chambliss all eliminated at the end of the round of 16. And coming into this evening, it is Bowie, Lariah, Nieto, and Rabel who find themselves in the danger zone. Race window can solve all of those concerns. Well, the iRacing safety car will dive to pit lane this time, and the field will be in the hands of the 05 Matt Danson. We're happy that you're with us on RaceSpot TV for the last time in the round of 12. They'll pace through the chicane as we say, let's go racing on the Roval. Spinner already as your race leaders get through the first set of corners. That was Adam de Blasio who gets turned around. Big hit, Justin, for one of your playoff drivers.
Yeah, hit right from behind in that very tough entry through turns 1 and 2 to get into the infield, and that was to be expected. Especially at the start when everyone's bunched together. It's so difficult to get through there cleanly. Keep in mind, several drivers bounced off each other, coming down towards the front straightaway as well, and through the infield. For the most part, though, outside of de Blasio, everyone else able to make it through nice and cleanly.
Yeah, we saw Demergent get into the fence about 4th in line, right coming to the green flag, and this is the battle for the race lead. A little bit of a different look on the 05 at Danson, but that is your race leader. Playoff cars running 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Looks like most of the field single files out. A little bit of a stack up there with Miller and company, but they all survive their first trip through the back straightaway chicane. And this one's equally as tricky. Look how far to the left they get, nearly onto the turf there, to try to straighten out that chicane as best they can. Underbrake it if you end up a little bit too far left into the grass there on the forefront of your screen. The car can lock up and spin out. If you hit those blue turtle curves on the right-hand side, you can jump the car and put yourself into the outside wall by the oval start-finish line. So plenty of places to make mistakes, just as many places to make time as we take a look back at the number 29 machine. That is Chris Rabel, middle of the road right now. Right ahead of the number 27 machine behind him. That's Jeremy Miller. Sean Casto also in line.
Keep in mind, Rebel, you see a little bit of damage on his right front fender. He slid in through the first corner into the outside barrier, and that lost him a few positions here. He seems to be struggling with grip, Evan, and that's one of the main things I've noticed when it comes to these drivers in practice and when it comes to these cars in general with the low downforce. There's not much grip, obviously, in low downforce compared to a high downforce package. You're slipping and sliding a lot, and a lot of these drivers struggle to try and make sure they were fast, but also didn't go so fast they slid the tires all the way into the corner.
There's a compromise. You want to find a middle ground. It's funny because, you know, as we take a second look at the replay with Adam de Blasio, first off, this was lap 1 going into the turn, and he got some help from Brandon 6. I think the side-by-side in front of him might have spooked him a little bit. He took it easy and got hit from behind. De Blasio started this race in 8th position. He is dead last right now in 28th. That is huge in terms of the championship he came into this evening, just in that contention. But to the point I was going to make, Justin, you talk about the balance, right? For a guy like Arjuna, right, who's racing in this series for the very first time and doing it on a road course, his 6 leaves the door open, and the 2 car is going to slice on down to the inside, give it to Sam Nieto through the infield portion. A stock car is very different than a sports car, right? I mean, you almost have to intentionally drive these cars slow to make them go fast. Fighting with the car to get it up to speed or under braking or through a corner is not really going to help you much.
Indeed, because it's so easy to make similar mistakes or make very big mistakes when it comes to driving a stock car on a road course. And with these machines, they're much more heavier to turn around compared to, say, a sports car around the corners. You have to really handle and barrel your way around. And speaking of a bit of trouble, some frustration over the radio, I think, from one of the playoff drivers, the 29.
Chris Rabel had some help going into the bus stop after contact with Miller. You can see the 29 car losing speed. And I would keep an eye on these two. Chris Rabel was 17th at the stripe. Let's see what happened. Under braking? Well, Miller just got right into the back of him, and it caused the 29 to miss the chicane. They both were likely just to give it a slowdown penalty by the sim. That's probably why they were tiptoeing through the corners. That contact costs Rabel 3 positions on the racetrack. It's pretty substantial. Could have been worse. Of course, Roval came into this, remember, in that three-way tie for 7th position. Really can't afford to be giving up anything like that, and he was not happy and had some choice words for that driver right there, Jeremy Miller.
That's kind of be expected when you are a playoff driver and want to maintain positions. Keep in mind, though, that's a part of the racetrack where there's so many different approaches to how you enter the bus stop, where if you get the braking markers wrong and say you're bumper to bumper like that, you're going to end up running right into the back end of them, and that seemed to be the situation there. So you need to be very alert and careful entering this section. And we're seeing that now for some of these drivers. Zachary Carr, though, I will say, doing a nice job slicing his way through some of the traffic, up 4 spots already.
Zachary Carr, who is somebody who has been very impressive on some of the road course races this year, and I think he's probably not very happy with how he performed in the qual session, Justin. He was the best in practice, putting down a 1:19.270. If he could have replicated that, would have put him on pole. Now, yes, track conditions probably a little bit different than when he put that down in practice. The pole time for Danza was 1:19.6, but still, Carr's qualifying time was 1.4 seconds off of his best time in practice. I mean, that is a significant difference. Of course, in qualifying, Justin, you can't really skirt track limits. You can't put a tire off or your time will be disallowed. So that might also be a factor in why some drivers took it a little bit easier. A little bit of slower time is better than a time being disallowed. But certainly Zachary Carr is a guy who I expect to make up positions. He's already up 4 to P10 there, and I think he's just getting started. Next driver up the road would be the playoff driver. Into number 2 is Sam Nieto.
And keep in mind, you mentioned the off tracks. Some of the top runners did have their first laps disallowed, trying to get their tires up to temperature. But keep in mind, in the case of Carr, several drifts on his qualifying lap was enough to cost him that much amount of time. And he's got front bumper damage now in this respective race too. So he's going to have a little bit of temp issues to think about through the speedway section, potentially with some of the draft. Other than that, though, he's taking this course nice and fairly easily so far. I'm liking his consistency so far, still in the 10th position.
And just to finish that point, you talk about, incident points on track. Well, you can't cause a caution in a race that doesn't have any yellows. So if you get 15 incident points in a race, that would be a penalty point. That's important to note as we, watch some of the drivers like a Matt Danson, who has 4 penalty points coming into this race. 6 would park him for 1. And there is RaceSpot's own Arjuna Kankipati. And Justin, I've been told we have to check out this race car, so we need to get a nice, good look at that RaceSpot number 78 machine. Arjuna reached out. We were talking about trying to get him in this race, and I see him on the back. Unfortunately, I see my face too many times. What else do we got on it? I see side-by-sides on it on the front, so as soon as Arjuna gets side-by-side with somebody, I'll give him a good one. Blame Hugo's on there, naturally. I think it's a good-looking car. I approve.
Who's the person holding the plant in the middle of the back bumper, though?
It's glossy, so I can't tell.
It's somebody holding a potted plant. If we can get a view towards the back bumper, right underneath the Chevrolet logo on that car. So, yeah, he's definitely having fun with it.
but it looks good, too. It's a fun car, but it still looks fast, so I dig it.
Yeah, I was talking
I
with
want to
him
get a custom die cast of that one.
Yeah, I was talking a little bit with him. He seemed excited about the race and wanted to be almost the Matt DiBenedetto of today's race, which then had to remind him, Matt DiBenedetto did very well this year at the Charlotte Roval. Keep in mind, was top 10 much of the day. Yeah, who is the potted plant person?
I don't know. The plant's bigger than their face, so I can't tell because it's shiny. I can tell me because you got the 5-foot-tall forehead. So that's how I know that's me, flanking the middle person.
Yeah, I can't tell either. I know he got a bit of help from Ryan Bauer as well with the paint scheme to get it ready for tonight. So definitely a great job on that, Mark. Making sure to get every single catchphrase and every single meme moment taken in, as I think he might know he's on camera and just smiling.
I think he's keeping an eye. Listen, he's having a good, clean start. He's up a position, started 16th. He rides in 15th. I say if he gets it, 14th or higher, right, finishing the top half of the field, that would be a success. A point we've talked about all year is how competitive this series has been this season. Arjuna is becoming the 65th different driver to take a green flag in this 2021 SimSeats Real Sim Racing Cup Series. He's also serving as our de facto in-race reporter, so we'll bug him at some point, Justin. Maybe when he gets a little bit more space around him later in this race, we'll dial up the driver of that 78 RaceSpot Chevy and talk with him and get some thoughts. Looking at some of the heavy hitters here in a battle for position number 2. Brandon Bowie has held it from the start, but there's a couple of battle wounds on the left front of the 88 Ford of Freenosh. He just caught the fence there as well. Freenosh is very safe on points, barring something catastrophic, but you know, he wants to be up in the mix all the time, and we've been putting pressure on Bowie, but that hit to the inside wall coming out of the infield section cost him a little bit.
I've been more concerned about how that car is going to turn a little bit, because that was more than a hiss to the right side of his car. That was a crunch to the spoiler, the right rear corner of his respective car for Andrew Freenosh. So it's going to affect him turning-wise and handling-wise potentially the rest of the way. But keep in mind this too, Brandon Bowie was very quick as well in practice. He was among the top 5 of the practice charts, and he's showing why he was a former pro driver in a NASCAR competition about half a decade to a decade ago. He's got a lot of experience, and he's well respected in good rounds. He almost made it a couple times back within what is now the Contender Series a few years back.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent in this mix. I mean, you talk about through the qualifying. I mentioned some big names with Cozy and, you know, with Seth the Merchant being in the mix. Drew Freenosh, obviously. Agno Phillip as well. Put a good run to it. And Daniel Eberhardt as well. Up there at the top of the points through the last couple of weeks of that qualifying iRacing series. Of course, Daniel won the race at Las Vegas to open this round of 12. So he didn't really need to start Talladega or here tonight at the Charlotte Roval because he was locked in anyways. Although I know Daniel is out fighting with COVID, and we gave him a little bit of love last week, and want to give a shout out to Daniel as well if he's watching, and hope that he can get back to feeling better soon and get back on the sim doing what he loves. He is a real threat for the championship, Daniel Eberhardt. So certainly want him to get back to 100% and thinking of him and hoping to see him back here on the sim very shortly. Watching some of these other battles down the back straightaway, Trey Browning in the number 19 position is in the middle of all of this. He was the only driver who didn't put down any time in practice. I don't know if that was keeping stuff close to the vest or just limited practice, but there's an onboard look with him.
Looking nice and smooth, sticking to that blue line, which is so very critical. But you can see as well just how much wheel you have to put in to make your way around those turtles, make your way around some of these tight left-handers, in particular through the chicanes. It takes a lot of muscle to wheel the car around.
You can see all the wheel he's giving it. I mean, it is a full-body workout, and you know, the lean always helps to rotate the car. You can even go out onto the painted a bit there to try to line yourself up for this corner, and the race down the back straightaway. The blue line there doesn't mean anything. They're going to use every little bit of asphalt. That's the funny thing, I think, Justin, when you watch, you know, other forms of road racing, something like a Formula One, right? They are very specific about track limits, where you can and cannot go. And it seems if it's a NASCAR stock car, if there's pavement, the car's going there. Doesn't matter as Liam Sheen gets into Agno Phillip through the bus stop. A bit of a touch. The 94 caught it. They're side by side on the banking. Phillip clears, but I don't think this is done yet.
Neither do I. It seems like both ends of some of these cars have a bit of contact on them. And you can tell Sheen's just trying to keep up and try and make sure he moves on forward. Keep this in mind. Liam Sheen had mentioned this to me before today's race, that he had been having an issue with his throttle pedal for a few months, had the spring essentially go away on it today. Before practice, there is no resistance in that pedal, and you can tell he's trying to work on that throttle control hard.
And as we were discussing pre-race, a road race like this is probably the last place that you want that to happen. You might be able to get away with it at the super speedway track or some of the intermediates these days that don't require a ton of on and off throttle time, but it is not a good thing here at the road course, and I feel like it's robbing us a little bit of what I was hoping would be the rubber match in the Danson and Sheed battle. Of course, we talk about Matt Danson leading this race in basically a must-win position. Well, he's perfect on the road courses this year. He hasn't won every single road course race this year, and that's an important distinction. Danson has won every road race he's raced in. That was COTA, that was Sonoma, and that was Road America, but he was actually suspended for the end of the regular season, missed Watkins Glen. That was a huge break for Liam Sheen, who was able to win at the Glen and lock himself into the playoffs. I know a lot of people were hoping that tonight could have been the rubber match between those two Titans, but Sheen with the pedal issues and said that he really didn't get a chance to get a ton of practice in either. I feel like robs us a little bit of what could have been a real fun storyline.
But the main thing to consider, too, is Liam Sheen entered tonight in a great position playoff standings-wise. He essentially just needed to finish about top 25, and he'd essentially lock himself into the next round. So he's doing what he needs to do. As long as he doesn't crash the car, he's fine. He just can't DN out, Evan.
That's critical, and that's, for a lot of guys. I mean, technically speaking, Liam Sheen leads the points coming into this, right? Eberhardt's at the top of the grid because he's the guy who has the win, but if wins weren't a thing, Liam Sheen would be at the very top of the board. Behind him would be Freenach by 4. They're all in the same position, and I think when you consider the fact that, you've only got 28 cars in the race, makes it a lot less likely that those guys can drop 22 points down to the cut line if you're Freenach, or drop 26 down to the cut line if you're Sheen. Not mathematically impossible, but highly unlikely. So maybe that's why Sheen's not too worried about pushing up front for the race win. If he coasts through and gets a top 10, top 5 finish, he will easily be in. On the right-hand side of your screen, you're looking at Adam de Blasio. Well, de Blasio quickly has become, Justin, one of the big storylines in this race. When he entered tonight, he was 12 points above the cut line, but he got turned by Brandon Six. Turn 1, lap 1. Well, he has since made up after dropping to dead last in 28th. He has made up almost 10 positions. He's up to 19th position. He has passed fellow playoff driver Chris Rabel. Still not really a position he wants to be in, but I think a long race will certainly give Adam a fighting chance. After kind of scrambling, after he thought tonight was going to be about defense, he has to go on the offensive here.
And give a shout out to the recovery drive so far as Trey Browning he gets into, in fact, as Browning lets him on go there in that close call situation. De Blasio had to make up 5-10 seconds to get up to the next position. Then another 5-10 seconds after he passed Joe Yates' 87 car to get to the next group. Then the next group. He is one of the quickest cars on the racetrack right now. He's running top 10 lap times. So there's a decent shot. He might be able to recover his way back into a solid position as long as he doesn't get into any more close calls like he just about had with the 18.
And of course, he needs to outrun, or at least not be outrun by the drivers that were behind him, right, by about 12 or so positions. So he needs to be better than guys like Lariah, guys like Bowie, all names that are outrunning him on the racetrack. So this could be awfully tight. Also, we talked about the trio for the bubble spot, right? Bowie, Phillip, and Rabel. If Danson goes on to win this race, as his race lead has grown to 3.6 seconds over now second place runner Andrew Freenach. As a spin on the right-hand side, sees the 8 car turned around. So spawn there is Kamer. Of course, no yellow. We'll keep on going, and Kamer ends it backwards, Justin, but it's highly looking like that 3-way tie for 7th is going to be the 3-way tie for the bubble position, and if that's the case, it could be a point of difference. Is to take a second look. Yeah, that's the blue curbs. Now, I said they're not as bad as real life because at least he didn't rip the splitter off it, but yeah, throwing the race car in the air, still not great, and probably a position I think Kyle would have rather just maybe let car go in that instance and try to force it up the inside like he did.
It looked like he was not given too much space, keep in mind, right before that second part of the hairpin. And I think Arjuna may have gotten a piece of that as well at the very tail end of the replay. He was able to get away without damage, keep in mind, so he just got that touch bit lucky. McBride, meanwhile, he stayed stationed, Evan, surprisingly in part, because he's been very quiet throughout the night. Middle of the pack in practice, middle of the pack now in the race. Doing okay so far. Remember, he was 1 point back of that tie.
Yeah, and, Lariah was only 3 points ahead of the tie, so there's so much going on, but you figure Rhett's going to need to make up positions on Rabel, Phillip, and Bowie, right? Well, McBride is sitting in 13th position. Where are the guys he needs to catch? Rabel's back in 21st, so he's outrunning him. But Phillip is up in 5th, and Bowie is up in 4th. That is not good at all for the 15 of McBride.
Yeah, he needs to be able to leapfrog that next grouping of cars in front of him, if in particular, potentially, because he's running consistent lap times, and you can tell with how he's trying to drive it, he's a little bit careful on those rears at the moment. Make sure they don't slide. But he has to find a way to poke his way around and be able to leapfrog a couple cars, whether on strategy or whether on pure pace. Compare that to, say, grouping such as this one you see. You're not going to have bumper to bumper in every single part of the racetrack. You've got to force yourself to get close to some of these drivers, then find a way to poke your way around, whether it's forcing the mistake or whether it's trying to be brave, as talked about earlier.
This battle for 21st position on back is about a half a lap almost behind your race leaders. They're blending up and onto the oval. That's turn 1 on the super speedway. Here on the Roval, it's technically that infield corner's 8, and then when you get onto the banking, it's 9. Right there off of 2 is actually 10, and then you get down to the bus stop here, that's turn 11 and 12. Your race leaders are already in the infield portion of the road course. I mean, at this pace, those drivers likely could end this would have been a lap or 2 down, as here comes Casto underneath the 12 of Ross Cato. Side-by-side fight for 20th on the racetrack, 21st, and Rabel is going to slide on through and get the job done. Casto and the 04 car, Braden Whitaker, haven't talked much about him. All that's going on the left, and on the right is Liam Sheen, who is trying to get a spot back after Zachary Carr just got around him.
Yeah, and Sheen just starting to struggle a little bit more on the long run now with a bit of that damage from before, from that treacherous bus stop braking marker. Jared Master, doing a pretty good job at keeping within this entire grouping, keep in mind as well. All these drivers, 123 4s to 6s at the moment. About 3 seconds plus a fall off. Some are up to 4 seconds.
And let's talk strategy, right? I mean, one of the things that I've always enjoyed about road races, and it depends on the distance, but one thing I've always enjoyed is that because there's no yellows, the strategy is allowed to play itself out, right? So we're looking at a 56 lap race. We're already 17 laps into this one. I mean, are we looking at drivers trying to go to halfway or two-stopper, or do we think kind of both are an option at this point, and maybe it just depends on what fall-off drivers are seeing?
I think it's also, keep in mind, the fuel mileage is going to be the big kicker of that, right, to dictate, as Kyle Kamer, just speaking of which, comes right on in with that significant damage. But in terms of the fuel, based on a lot of the races we've seen in the past, if you think back to, say, eNASCAR competition, that was around 45-50 laps with the Roval when it was on the schedule for a couple of years. That was essentially around 1 stop with the distance, but with it being 56 tonight, I think it's more so towards the 2-stop window gas-wise. If you can stretch it to halfway, you're in a decent spot, but I still feel like it might be a 2-stop based on some of the numbers we've seen in the past.
You saw Kyle Kamer dive to the pit lane as we run on board with Cato. Kamer is still in the box, looking like he is getting damage repaired. He is not a playoff driver, so not the night he wanted, certainly after starting in a top 10 position, but it doesn't look like there's a ton of urgency in that camp. However, Brandon Six is also down pit road. If we were to make this our number, right, 18, 19, that area, this is kind of right on the money for the 2-stop strategy. Nick Silver is following him down pit road, so looks like at least these drivers going for the 2-stopper. Trey Browning is also on pit road.
And not a surprise at this point, especially for the drivers who prioritize grip more than anything else. But something to consider too is if you can stretch it as far as you can, a lot of the drivers will lose a lot of time in terms of follow-up, but keep this in mind. If you are able to shorten the length you're on pit road, that is so critical in terms of where you are positioning. But another thing to consider too is how how dominant is Danson when it comes to his road course racing ability, long run in particular? He's running half a second quicker than Freenosh, a multiple-time RSR champion, and Seth DeMerchant, a very strong competitor in eNASCAR qualifier competition, no more so for short track racing. He's gone from 1.5 seconds being the stabilizing point to 7.6 seconds the lead.
And here's your first big move. It's Brandon Bowie from a top 5 position. One of your playoff drivers is down to the pit lane, working lap number 19. So he will get 4 tires fuel, get out, and he'll start to put down quicker lap times than the drivers who have yet to pit. We'll see if that becomes an advantage for him as this race goes on. But you're right. I mean, for the first half of this run, Freenosh to Merchant, Phillip, and all those guys, even Brandon Bowie for a little bit there, were keeping Matt Danson honest, right? They were not letting him run away, but it has been a different story since, and he is checking out emphatically, looking to advance into the round of 8. Of course, you talk about going up against the multi-time and 3-time defending Cup Series champion Andrew Freenosh. Well, Danson wants to join Freenosh as the first driver to sweep RSR's major titles in a single year. Of course, Danson won the Winter Series championship over the offseason, looking to stay in contention for the Cup championship as well. He is doing his job right here this evening. But your race leaders not looking for the pit lane yet. Let's see what this mid-pack group does as they race through the infield and back onto the racetrack. Whitaker towards the tail end of this group, and you got the likes of David Washington and some others in the trio here with Schmidt and Cato.
They're all a bit wiggly coming out of these corners, too. They also have Kyle Kamer, who is just around this grouping, too. But you see, Ross Cato, I think, may have felt like he may have been holding up. William Schmidt just said, gonna let you on by, even though the braking marks just about made things a little bit difficult for that entry for the bus stop.
Nice Atlanta Braves themed paint scheme as well on Cato's car. We've seen that for the last couple of weeks. I know that he's probably very happy that the Braves took down the Brewers today to take a 2-1 lead in their NLDS series. And there's the look on the board with Ross, right-hand side. I love that snap of the wheel, right? When you got the wheel cranked and you just kind of let go of it for a moment, let it straighten itself out, and you catch it again just to correct a little bit of a slide. That's not really something that you consciously do. It's just kind of a subconscious act from just having that much time behind the wheel. And Cato is the one under fire, but looked pretty calm on the onboard look. David Washington, the driver, working hard to get around him underneath in turn number 4. And Washington may just have the speed to get the job done. Cato's not going to fight him for it. They go uphill here in turn 5. That's turn 6, right up against the concrete wall. And they go downhill 7. And then the aforementioned turn number 8 as they get out and onto the banking. So Washington will take that position away. And sounds like Justin Williams Schmidt, who was in this trio, missed that corner.
Yeah, I was about to say, you may have noticed off in the grass, he was trying to save it all the way in towards the tire wall before having to come back onto the racetrack. So that ended up being a 2-for-1 essentially for Washington in the span of 3 corners. And it just shows the difficulty right before you reach those corners that bring you back onto the oval, right? Where you're trying to carry so much speed that you try and go along the paint. But sometimes you carry so much speed, you go off into the grass. You hit the grass, though, it can easily carry you all the way into the wall. And right there, he nearly turned himself in the direction of Nick Silver's car.
Is that, do we call that the William Byron? Just driving it off the track there in turn 5, trying to get a little bit too much out of it. It's a tough break for Schmidt because, like we said, he was in this group. He was 22nd, not that long ago, or now 22nd, I should say, but loses a handful of positions when he went off of the racetrack at that time. And there's another good look at Arjuna, also one of the drivers who has yet to come down to the pit lane for service as he is cracked inside of the top 10. And look at that squeeze on Sam Nieto, making passes. Is that RaceSpot Chevy?
He's looking very good on the long run here. He stayed mostly out of trouble. No major mistakes from Arjuna outside of nearly getting involved in a T-bone situation down the front. But other than that, he's showing the pace that we felt he might have. But keep in mind, as that went on, Brandon 6, He got a little bit of help, and this is not the type of sequence you want to be in, because not only did he spin, it took him several seconds to get back going.
Yeah, it's a tricky spot to spin, right? Because you got cars coming, you really don't have the real estate to move around, and I don't think it was intentional, but he, was certainly helped around by Jiren Winemaster there for the moment. When I saw the 66 spin, Justin, I was wondering if it was the doing of Adam de Blasio, right? Because it was vice versa early in the race, but Adam didn't do nothing. Just, I guess, all the Harvick and Elliott talk over the last couple of days. Anytime I see one bit of contact and then that car split out later, I'm just assuming that somebody's paying somebody back. But nothing nefarious in that instance. You can see Six now trying to work pretty diligently around David Washington, and now right up alongside Braden Whitaker. They'll drag race down kind of the back stretch of the infield here. 66 has got the bottom, it's his. Meanwhile, left-hand side of your screen, the 15 of Rhett McBride in a great battle, but Brandon Bowie was so aggressive under braking, and Arjuna now going to make the pass on the outside. So McBride starting to slide back on the old tires. Now Arjuna has not pit, Justin, but Bowie has. Remember, Bowie, I mentioned, was the first car from up inside of the top 5 to pit. He is on only 4-lap old tires. He's up to P7. Everybody else is going to be able to make it to the halfway point. So this is going to be a split strategy race. Matt Danson has 12 laps of fuel left in the 05 Toyota up front. That's more than enough to get him to halfway. So it was a decision, not kind of a by necessity call for the drivers who pitted to go for 2. They feel like that's the better call. So we'll see how this shakes out in the end.
And that was kind of what I was trying to get towards before, right? Is if you're a driver, you try and minimize the amount of time in the pit lane. If you can get to the one stop, you try it at least, right? And I can see what Brandon Bowie is doing, though. He's not going to win the race by repeating the same strategy as Matt Danson or Andrew Freenosh at this point. Let's be quite frank. You need to try something different, and for Brandon Bowie, he's trying that something different to see if the 2-stop ends up being the more beneficial thing with having the fresher tires towards the end of the race. I will say this, though, when it comes to some of these drivers, a lot of them are being very smart on trying to make the passes as some of the drivers with fresher tires zoom on by. And that was the case with Arjuna, and some of the case for a couple of these air cars, such as this group.
Just listening into some of the driver chatter as these drivers trying to work their way through this, and I'm just trying to take account, right? Like, what's going to be the strategy makeup on this one? Seemed like all these cars were diving to the pit lane at once. In actuality, it's only about a half a dozen cars total that came down pit road. So majority of cars are going to go for a one-stop strategy. You would think, Justin, if that's the overwhelmingly popular call, that's likely the winning call, right? I mean, you would think more drivers would get it right than would get it wrong. But for Danson here, I mean, he really needs to hope that he's on the right call, because he's way faster than the cars on the same strategy as him. The only way I see him not getting the job done tonight is some sort of an issue, or somehow Bowie pulls this thing off. But I still think the one stop's going to be the way to go. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. But pretty clear, most drivers going for the one stopper, and we're not that far now from halfway, so those pit stops are on the horizon.
And it's going to be interesting how far they push past halfway, too, when talking about the one-stop scenario. Because you mentioned the fuel mark extends more than 30 laps. Liam Sheen, I think, just realized that and said, you know what, let's go for the undercut. That puts him on the defensive for the rest of the way. So it's all coming down in part to preference, but also where you may come out on the racetrack after the pit stops, where you end up as well when it comes to your net positioning in general. You need to think about all of that if you want to try and find your way up to the front.
You can see that one car to pit road, Liam Sheen. I kind of knew that we were coming to pit road soon because he said it on the open radio channel, so he's headed out for service. He does 24 laps on his first stint. He'll have to do 32 on the second. That is a easy-to-do number, so he should be good to go to the end of this race. Liam Sheen to blend himself back out, and watching some of the other guys. And, for being some 25 laps in and on the stopwatch, about a half hour into this SimSeats 205K at the Roval. Still plenty of action on the racetrack, as you can see the Audi 4 of Agnell Phillip making up for some positions that he lost in the first half of this race, taking a spot back from Seth DeMerchant. DeMerchant started this race 6th, Phillip started 3rd, DeMerchant passed him early, but the long run favoring Agnell Phillip, who puts himself back into the top 3. And look at all the slide from the 57 to Seth DeMerchant through the first half of the racetrack.
Yeah, at this point, I think Seth has no rear tires, if anything, or he's trying to have some fun here, or maybe both, because the quarter panels are ripped off of that car. When you lose the right rear quarter panel in particular, it causes you to get very, very loose. And I think Seth DeMerchant knows he's got a problem here. He's not going to finish as high as maybe he expected. He's just now having a bit of fun here with the drift car.
And we'll see, we talk about some of the damage. Look at this slide. No more than 4 feet from the fence. And I think Seth realizes these tires are pretty much done. So we'll have a little bit of fun with the tires and we'll likely be down pit road shortly for service. He is in the one-stop strategy camp and does have a little bit of damage. I think he's realized, being some 9 seconds off of the pace of the race leader before we dropped out of 3rd, likely not going to win this race. So gonna have a little bit of fun with it and probably still contend for a top 5. Remember, Seth, not a driver competing for points, part-time schedule this afternoon, and is just here to have some fun, try to take race wins. Can't take the race win tonight, doesn't have the pace for it, so he's gonna have some fun with this one. But, I mean, just looking through the field, talking about some of the battles that have lasted. I mean, Casto and Washington right here for 19th and 20th just will not get away from each other. You got Whitaker not that far behind them. You got Cato, you got Rabel, you got Schmidt. I mean, all those cars in the distance. This is like 6 cars separated by 2 seconds right now fighting.
And that's kind of the trend, right, when it comes to road course racing, is you'll see drivers grouped together much of the way, and you'll have these small groups, whether it be 2, 3, sometimes 4 cars. It makes things intriguing, and in turn, it kind of gives you the carrot on the stick of sorts of having that competition to battle with. Look right there, though. You take a little bit too much of the turtle or some of the paint potentially through that bus stop, you get the chance of having to take a slowdown. Seen a couple drivers already who go a little bit too aggressive in those turtles, have to sacrifice a spot like we just seen with the 52.
And you can see on the scoring screen, top left, Matt Danson, your race leader, is on pit road. 1 lap shy of the cross flags. He is in for service. Freenosh will stay out. It's a drag race to the line. Danson leads the end of lap 27. Thought maybe Freenosh was going to steal a free bonus point there, but it did not happen. Obviously, Freenosh will cycle through to the race lead. Phillip stays out still. Bowie is going to cycle up to the number 3 position. Seth DeMerchant, we talked about his tires being shot. He is headed to pit road. Sam Nieto is on pit road. So is Rhett McBride. So is Joe Yates further on back. And now for Matt Danson, clean racetrack, Justin. This is important. He blends back out with not a ton of cars around him. That's what he wants, right? He didn't want to get blended back into a battle with a bunch of cars that could endanger him. I think that's mission accomplished. Clean pit stop, no penalties, no mistakes, and clean track to work with.
And that's the critical part. Clean track. No chance of being held up in the corners in particular with traffic. Danson is one of the few that has not put a single scratch on his car. He has been picture perfect so far. But the main thing to look at numbers-wise is the difference now on the 1 versus 2 stop. Bowie's got a 6-second advantage right now with the 9-10 lap buffer on tire strat. I'm curious on how that plays out at the end of the race now, because depending on where Bowie comes out the second pit stop, that's going to be the critical part where we may have an absolute dogfight of a finish as Freenosh comes in and Danson nearly spins.
Whoa! He almost ended up in the tire barrels on the exit of turn 4 on the super speedway. My, oh my, Matt Danson, what did I say? It's his, assuming he doesn't throw it away. And I don't know if that was just a little bit of lack of concentration, Justin, but I don't think that was a slide he did for fun. That was different than a set the merchant slide. That is not a place where you want to get a car any out of control, and it's because he clipped the apron.
Yes.
Watch this. Right there, he's sideways. I mean, 3 feet from being shish kebabbed on the pit lane wall.
And there's a reason you need to have very strong control as a driver of your car. You do not have the right reaction time, you're likely crashing into that barrel and that barrier. Absolutely scary for Matt Danson indeed in that situation. Unreal that he was able to hold on and just barely avoid that wall. But that just shows if you go too low on that apron, below that blue line, to the point where it starts to be a bit of a transition on the apron itself, then it can snap you around just like that.
So, a bit of a catch-your-breath moment for Matt Danson, and we talk about, as we see the 94 machine head down to the pit lane this time, so service upcoming for Agnew Phillip, and Brandon Bowie gets the lead lap. Justin, you were talking about kind of dangling the carrot on a stick, right, to give you something to fight for. It's very easy, I think, in these road races, when you don't have a ton of cars around you, to get a little bit complacent, right, to lose that focus. And I wonder if that was a little bit of what happened there, and I can promise you that caught Danson's attention, that he is fully awake now if he was starting to get a little bit lazy.
I mean, I've also seen him in road course races, keep in mind, in various different series too, Evan, where he's led a whole train of cars into the grass. We're talking the entire top 5 into the grass, and he still came away with a race victory. He is that impressive when it comes to road course racing on iRacing.
He has been oh so good, and we talk about past winners, right, on the road courses, active winners on the road courses, and they are far more prevalent now than they used to be, right? But we had never seen back-to-back winners, right? Freenosh was the winningest road course driver in RSR history entering 2021. He had 3 wins on his career. The inaugural trip here to the Roval in 2018, which was actually the unmaintained version of the road course, not this newly reconfigured one. He then won at Watkins Glen in 2019 and the new version of the Roval here in 2020. So Freenosh is the defending winner at this racetrack, as Agnew Phillip's going to go underneath the 1 car, and he will make the pass for what is 6th on track right now around Liam Sheen. But again, Danson, Coda, Sonoma, Road America, can't say for certain that he would have won it at Watkins Glen. Remember, he was out for that race. We talked about that. Liam Sheen got that critical win to lock himself in, but I mean, Danson can go with a win here tonight. Could have become the winningest road course driver in RSR Cup Series history in the span of 1 season.
Absolutely incredible, to say the very least. But look at that. That's for the overall race lead. And Bowie had a bit of a slide there with that move from Danson, as I think they were giving themselves a decent amount of space too there, especially with the tire difference. It's now made the correct little strategy part. But you mentioned how much you can get win-wise. Keep in mind, the amount of road courses has changed a lot in terms of the weighted importance in stock car racing. It was around 2017-ish where it was just about 2 road courses, I believe, on the schedule at the time. Then you've seen it go up to 3 with the Roval. And now, with it so much more prevalent in the Real World Cup Series schedule, it's becoming that much ever more important to be well-rounded. You can't just be the road course specialist. You can't just be the mile-and-a-half specialist. You can't just be the short track specialist. You need to be good at it all, especially when it comes to the virtual side too, if you want to be a champion.
Here's a second look at the pass for the overall race lead. Bowie on 13 lap old tires. It was Danson on 4 lap old tires. Just so much more control. Got underneath him, and there was nothing that Bowie could do in that instance. And 7 road course races are on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule of the 30 races in this 2021 SimSeats RealSimRacing Cup Series. 5 of them are road races, so that is 1 in every 6 races is on a road course. A couple of drivers still need to pit, but since we are past halfway home, let's take a look at your SimSeats Midway race break. So Matt Danson has seconded himself back to the race lead. He is pulling away from Brandon Bowie, who we anticipate may still need to come down to the pit lane for his second of 2 stops later on. Zachary Carr in third. Justin has not pitted yet. He is ahead of Jaron Winemaster and ahead of Andrew Freenosh, who was also not yet pitted in 5th. Playoff drivers Agnew Phillips at 6th and Liam Sheen is 7th. Arjuna Kankipati is up to 8th in his debut. Cody Harris 9th and Brandon 6th rounds out your top 10.
Sam Nieto currently in the 11th position, 45 seconds back, trying to get around 6th at the moment. Rhett McBride is in 12th, 46 seconds back of Matt Danson. Then it's Nick Silver, who has charged his way up from 18th to 13th position. Trey Browning, who started in the low 20s and 23rd up to 14th. Out of Blasio's recovery drive has seen him get within that range of Browning to 15th. Michael Arias in 16th. The last drivers currently on the lead lap, Chris Rabel, Joseph Tice, 17th, 18th. Whitaker is in 19th, and after a slide to the grass, Schmidt is in 20th.
And he is just ahead of a battle with David Washington, who's his 21st position. Ross Cato 22nd, and Sean Casta 23rd. Joe Yates 24th. Remember, all these drivers were fighting with each other at the tail end of the lead lap. Well, they're still in a battle. It's just one lap down. The Kyle Kamers -2 and 25th. We saw him have an extended stay on the pit lane earlier to get a little bit of damage repaired. He is ahead of the DNFs, which will include Seth DeMergent 26th, Jeremy Miller 27th, and Brian Chambliss in 28th position. That's a look at the bottom at your SimSeats Midway race break. Since 2009, SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high-quality, made-in-the-USA driving simulators that include motion systems, complete turnkey iRacing packages, and custom fabrication. Their customer base includes all racers from the amateur to the pro ranks, and everyone on the SimSeats team is a weekend racer too. Their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Join SimSeats for the thrill of racing at any time, in any car, and on any track by visiting sim-seats.com to learn more information. You're watching the number 15 machine right there. That was McBride working himself through the front straightaway chicane with a pass down the backstretch on Brandon 6. That was for position, and has moved McBride back up into the number 11 spot. And at this point, Justin, I don't know if we're going to see a surprise, right? It seems pretty clear that the one-stop strategy is the better strategy. We kind of have a real good thought as well, I would think, of what speed everybody's got. So for the most part, drivers with, a couple of points here or there of a question mark kind of know what the right-hand side of our screen is telling us, right? Where we are in the points as they run now. And we talked about Bowie, Phillip, and Rabel. That was the big group to look at. Well, Bowie, Phillip, good. Rabel, not good. He is on the back end of this right now. Our live points, though, say we have a tie with McBride and Lariah for 8 and 9. Danson, of course, is showing up as 10, but remember, he's your leader. So if he wins this, he comes up to the top, and that kicks McBride and Lariah both below the cut line, Justin, which is big.
In other words, if you're Rhett McBride, you need to step on it and quick. Find whatever pace you may be missing some way, somehow. Get around Nieto for 1. And 2, try to get as far up as you can from there. That's going to be the tough part, though, because he's essentially now in the balance of he needs mistakes either from Danson or more so realistically from someone like an Agno Phillip to have a realistic shot here, Evan. That's going to be the tough part because it's now less so about how he's driving and more so about the destiny built up by his fellow competitors at this rate.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that you don't want. And Rhett knew this, right? He came into this race on the backside. He was only 1 point out of, where everything finished in terms of the tie. But Rhett knew that it was going to be tough. And he knows that because he didn't get the finish that he wanted at Talladega, right? Started that race cusp of the top 10. Ended up finishing back in 26th position out of 42 cars. Not the worst, but that's what put him on the backside. And is what has him in a position of relying on somebody else. That is never something you want as a race car driver. As after 35 laps, Zachary Carr has finally decided to come to pit road. Jaron Winemaster will pit directly behind him. Jaron's only been out there for 16 laps. Jaron's putting a bookend on a 2-stop strategy. We are still waiting on Freenosh, Whitaker, Washington, and Schmidt, all to come down pit road. Those drivers have not pitted once this evening, and as we mentioned that, I would expect them to be down to the pit lane very, very shortly. So if you can go, Justin, 36 laps, which is what Andrew's about to do, if he can get by to the next time, then I'm looking at a guy like a Bowie, who's been out there for, he pitted 17 laps ago. He came down pit road. I mean, could he, even though we thought he was going for a two-stopper, could he possibly go 37 and finish the race and kind of call an audible and skip out on a pit stop, or would he even want to? I mean, I didn't think they could go this far, but clearly they can, and there's Bowie, just as I bring it up. No, he wants to stick to his guns. He's going to come down pit road. He will give up second position. So let's see if he's able to get back up there by the race end. All those cars going through the bus-stop chicane of the drivers that are about to pass him in the running order.
Yeah, so he's now putting himself on the offensive here, and I'm curious where he's going to have to try and claw his way forward from. It's pretty clear based on the amount of time that he is not in the prime position interval-wise to try and fully get back up to Matt Danson here. But quickly off and away. Still inside the top 5, so that just shows the raw pace Brandon Bowie has shown throughout the day, and he's going to have some of the freshest tires in the field. The biggest question mark to me is Andrew Freenosh. I'm surprised the 88 has not elected to come on down still, even with the amount of fuel in the tank. He's now approaching 37 this time by. And essentially everyone that would be in the range to, say, go for a massive undercut and try and push it forward has essentially gone to the two-stop, so no one's really extended it this far or put themselves in a spot to be in Andrew's situation like he is.
Yeah, it's quite something, right? And the question is, what's the plan here, right? It has Andrew up to second, but remember, I mean, he was a quick car anyways, right? He's not only in second position because of this strategy, though. Is it one of those cases where he's so good on points that he figures, why not try it? Because I feel like if he had just pitted with Danson, he could have guaranteed, a top 3 finish anyways, Justin. I feel like the only thing that this strategy can do is hurt you. Now, he will have fresh tires at the end of the race. Next time by, there's going to be 18 laps to go. That's a long time in road course racing, but I'm just kind of curious what the thought process was behind the strategy. And again, I think everybody's playoff positioning influences the kind of calls they've been making tonight. Danson needs to, he needs points, he needs to win, so he runs a straight shooter race. One-stop strategy, that's it. Some of the other guys who have been a little bit safer, have been a little bit more open on the strategy, maybe just trying to ride around, stay out of trouble, avoid, battles with some other cars and just try to maintain. But, I mean, he's going to get passed by Agno Phillip here in a moment. Agno Phillip has already pitted in this race. I just find it hard to believe that he'd be able to pit and then catch back up to Agno when you figure you're spending the upwards of 40 seconds on pit road.
If I'm looking at the timing right, by the time he finishes the service, he would be behind Bowie at the very least. Would be maybe around Cody Harris and Arjuna Kankipati at the moment. So the main thing that pops up in my mind, though, when it comes to seeing the strategy is something that was talked about with the Real World Cup race on Sunday. Because in the first stage, it's worth noting that AJ Allmendinger did not pit during the stage caution, right, Evan? The strategy before that motor blew up in stage 3 was go for a two-stop if it stayed green. So we're seeing shades of that with how long Andrew Freenosh is trying to push. He's trying to go nearly 50 laps in the tank. Realistically here, that would be more so maybe 46 since it's all flat out. But it's also to where is he going to end up? Is he going to be able to have enough to even get around, say, a Brandon Bowie? Enough time even? He's still kept in the 122s. That's the pivotal part in all this. Especially since some of these drivers are hitting some of their fastest lap times of the race now with the track temp.
You mentioned the track temp, but just kind of taking a look at the racetrack. It looks like a little bit of cloud cover has joined the party. Track temp still higher than the outside temperature, 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal temp, 86 Fahrenheit. A little bit of sun now peeking back out, and we talk about that 2 times progression through the time of day in the sim. It's not going to have as big of an effect on, an afternoon race like this as, say, it did, with that Las Vegas race that raced a little bit into the evening, like we saw with Darlington and Bristol and Richmond races at the round of 16, which were all kind of sunset starts, nighttime races for the second, half of them. But certainly things to keep in mind as we look forward to more critical races later on this year. Of course, after this one, we'll know the 8 drivers who advance into the next round. As we check back in with Adam de Blasio, Justin, he is back up to position number 12. So the stat sheet will tell you that's a -4, but I'm going to read that as a +16.
Yeah, an incredible recovery drive for de Blasio, and it becomes the question of what if, because without the 10 seconds lost, he's probably right around Arjuna Kankipati, if not in front of him. So it's just shown that determination from de Blasio. He really loves to race on iRacing, especially when it comes to the fixed cars with the cup cars, and we've seen that love come on in. He's kept his pace pretty solid as well, 123.5s after 11 laps on the tires already.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you want to be consistent, you want to be smooth, and Adam's good to the end of this race. He's on the same strategy as Michael Laraya, but he's running ahead of him, so he's pretty safe for that. Could get up to Jiren. I don't know if he could get up to McBride and Nieto to crack the top 10, but certainly he is doing everything that he can after. I'm sure if we had looked at the live points just after lap 1, when he is down in 28th position, it would not have been a pretty sight for him. And he's still getting outrun by a lot of playoff guys. Don't get me wrong, right? He's getting outrun by 7 playoff drivers on the racetrack. But again, he had a bit of a points advantage coming into this race, and kind of reminds me of the Chase Elliott storyline, right? Last race, minus the drama behind it, but de Blasio and Elliott both came into this race above the cut line. They found themselves behind it after a wreck, and right now Arjuna de Blasio doing his job, driving through the field to make it up for it.
Keep this in mind too, we talked about the need to be a well-rounded driver, especially in the road course side too. Think about it this way. A few years ago, majority of the field outside of a couple would be in the lower safety license class, maybe lower the IR scale. We're talking about just about everybody now has got themselves an A license. They put in a fair amount of work. De Blasio is among those who does a fair amount of road course racing too when it comes to the iRacing service. And some of that talent really showcases its way in. And some other drivers who we may not have expected as much on the IR scale per se are higher up these days, like a Freenage, like, say, a Winemaster. The talent pool has gone up exponentially since the last time these drivers had to race at the Roval, keep in mind, and it's really showcased in terms of some of these comeback drives we've had.
Chris Roval is somebody else that we've been following in this race. Of course, he had contact with Jeremy Miller in the backstretch bus stop chicane and lost a few positions, not a ton. But he found himself on the back end. Of course, Roval was a guy who needed a good night tonight. We talked about that tie with Phillip and Abui, but with Phillip and Abui both running in 4th and 3rd respectively, it looks like Chris Roval's championship hopes may be coming to a close here this afternoon in the Southern Creek Ford Mustang, one of the many great partners of the drivers in this series, and we'll give some love to Southern Creek and everybody else who partners with the teams in this SimSeats RealSimRacing Cup Series. Chris has had really a good season. 9 top 10 finishes, Justin, is more than half of the drivers remaining in the playoffs. I mean, it has been really good stuff out of him this year, but it just seems like this Roval's going to bite him, and that goes back to the point you made earlier where you can't be the short course specialist, the intermediate specialist, the road ringer. You need to be consistent across them, and this is the only, road course race in these playoffs. Roval gained big at Talladega, did his job at Dega, but it's not having a terrible night here, right? But when the guys you're going up against are top 5 A-license road drivers, I mean, it's just so tough when drivers are that good.
And it's tough to keep in mind when, say, you have troubles early on in the round, because essentially with the system these days, one bad race can be costly depending on the amount of points you've gathered in your positioning in the standings. 31st at Las Vegas kind of was the bad start to the round, essentially. And he's now really not been able to recover that back, and you have to think, no crash at Las Vegas, no DNF rather at Las Vegas. We're talking about a different situation for Chris Rabel. So that's just kind of a lot that has to go through your mind here of make sure you don't get yourself in the dangerous situations and have to make yourself be a must-win scenario or a must-get top 5 or top 10, let's say, at a wildcard track like a Charlotte Roval or Talladega.
We mentioned that we were going to bother our RaceSpot TV in-race reporter, Arjuna Kankipati, earlier in this race, and let's see if we can interrupt him and get a word as, Liam Sheen just put it into the wall at a turn number 1 in position number 6. That was a good little bit of damage, and there's a couple of drivers behind him, Harris and Arjuna. We're not that far out of the picture that could be contending with him. But let's pull him up, Justin, see what we can get on the radio with the driver of the 78 machine, Arjuna. You got a copy?
Oh, hello. I was wondering when you were going to come and distract me.
Right, we promised we would, and I figured now that you're in a critical battle inside of the top 10, now's the time to do it.
Not bad, right? I mean, I was slow at the start, but I worked my way up there.
Well, you said, and Justin mentioned it, that you wanted to be the Matt DiBenedetto in this, maybe not realizing that he ran top 10 at the Roval, but you're doing it right now. Started 16th, you're in 8th. I mean, the car's looking pretty clean still. What's the race been like so far from behind the wheel?
It's been fun, I gotta tell you. Competition's pretty impressive here. I was not necessarily sure how strong it was going to be, but I've had some fun battles, and most importantly, Evan, I got a question for you. How do you enjoy the car, specifically the rear end of it?
Well, I was joking earlier that I think I needed, one of those custom die casts of it, but I've been waiting for you to get side by side with somebody.
I know.
So I could give you one. So try to reel in Cody Harris and Liam Sheen up there, and then we can make something happen.
I think Winemaster's going to come and catch me, so don't worry. You'll get your opportunity shortly.
He's 5 seconds back, keep in mind, but on fresher tires. But how would you describe the feel of this car around the racetrack, especially since you mentioned the Nürburgring was the last time you raced on the surface in general? What's been that feeling like of going from sports car to stock car?
I have to remember I'm on broadcast, so I have to be careful with the language I pick, but it's a pig. It's pretty tanky, but that's what makes it fun. I have not had this much fun in a long time. Yeah, there's something about these cars where just the amount of weight that they have in a track like this, it's just such a challenge to get it slowed down and keep yourself going. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and hopefully the next gen car is something like this, because I've really been enjoying it.
We were talking, theories about how to drive these cars earlier, right? And how, unlike maybe road-specific cars, the trick maybe to being fast at a road course race at a stock car is to not drive it hard, because you don't get much out of, over driving this thing, because it is not made to drive on a track like this, which is what makes it so fun. So comparing it to, the other road racing that you've done over your career on the sim, I mean, explain to somebody what makes this stock car so bad maybe at a road course, but translates into a fun challenge.
Yeah, it's the weight, it's the amount of power that it's got. So I'm a downforce guy. Prototypes, LMP2, IndyCar, that's what I like to drive. But this is just such a different challenge. You got to make sure that you're on the throttle at the right time, not putting too much power into the car, given how much you're turning as well. So it's definitely a challenge, and the biggest thing is just keeping the tires under you and trying to make sure that they don't overheat. I was a bit aggressive in a couple of laps earlier in this stint, and so had to pay the price and back it down for a couple of laps after that as cones go flying in front of me. Cone murder going on here, but yeah, it's all about the tires. I think that's the crucial thing. What you do to the 4 contact points on the ground really determines how your race is going to go, and yeah, really fun challenge.
Now, we talked about this a little bit, and I did get an indication a little bit from the painter and Ryan Bauer, who helped along with this scheme. You mentioned the amount of fun The fun translated to what was on the car, of course, the catchphrase and the faces on the back. What went to the process of planning out this fun paint scheme? And second question, who is the person holding the plant?
Planning, I gotta say, there's no planning that went into this. It was very much a last-minute thing. The person holding the plant is one of my teammates, Elliot Roberts, who is also one of the wizards in terms of taking photos on the service. He saw the picture I had posted of mine and Evan's faces on the back of the car. I was to get a little bit loose. And he said, you got to throw this one on there too. So I said, you know what, let's do it. And there's a fun little story that you can kind of tell from the pictures. I get excited about something. Evan's like, ooh, what's going on? Elliot shows up with his plant. You're not impressed. I am very impressed, Evan.
Okay, so there's a poetic storyline
Yes.
on the bumper. So I'll request that he gets a really nice shot of the back bumper of that car from this race, and I can make it my Twitter header or something. We can have some fun with it.
You'll be waiting for a while. My team won our split of Petit Le Mans. He still hasn't gotten us our photos. Still.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a good-looking car, and you're having a good run. So we'll leave you be to see if you can close this thing out inside of the top 10 with 9 to go, and we'll check back in with you post-race.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys.
It is RaceSpot's own Arjuna Kankipati running in 8th position, Justin. I'll tell you what, very, very impressed. And, Arjuna may be a little bit, shy to not hype himself up, but he's really good on the road stuff, right? In 446 starts in his career, he has 58 road wins, 190 top 5, so that translates to 13% win percentage. That's pretty good. 42% top 5 percentage. He's also pretty good on the ovals. He's got an A-class road license, B-class oval license. So unlike me, who doesn't drive a lot on the sim, but that's because I'm bad, Arjuna knows what to do behind the wheel.
Yeah, one of the main things that pops up in my mind is before he got into a lot of the broadcasting, he was racing in series like Lionheart, for example, for open wheel cars. And that's where a lot of his specialty is. Then he had the meteoric rise over the past year or so, with 2020 being 2020, across the broadcasting world to being one of the top voices and top producers in all of the service. It's been incredible, the rise of Arjuna broadcast-wise, but he obviously, of course, has that driving talent that helped get him into the situations where he's at as well. And it's been interesting to see him drive today. He nearly overdrives the corner, though.
Yeah, and he's right behind this battle. Gets Sheen kicking the back end out, and here comes Cody Harris trying to fight up on the banking, coming off a 4 on the super speedway. They will go side by side through the chicane. They make contact. Sheen jumps the curb. He stays in front. Now, what is Ross Cato going to do? Cato is a lapped car, not for position. Here comes Arjuna into the mix. He can smell blood in the water as he joins in. Why not? Let's make it a 3-way battle in the battle for P6 with 8 laps to go.
And you have to be careful if you're Arjuna here. You can almost see with the look on his face, he is having a slight touch of concern and thought here, because that's the second time, Evan, Harris has made contact with someone in that manner through the final corners around the circuit with the turtle curbs, with squeezing towards the left curb. So now you have to be careful in how you approach things, because it's pretty clear Cody Harris is not given as much space compared to some of the other drivers in that section. So if you get the run, you have to take it before you get to that right, left.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk road racing, there's a lot of tracks that have really nice rhythmic sections, right, that are challenging for the driver, but those rhythmic sections really aren't the greatest passing opportunities, right? It's hard to establish positioning with somebody in that part of the racetrack, but then it's also that much harder to set up for a pass, because if you get the inside in one place, you're on the outside in the next. So you really do need to pick and choose where you're going to make these moves, and Harris felt like that spot right there, the chicane, was going to be it. Liam Sheen stuck with him. They touched, and clearly the one car is not going to back down. Liam does need to be careful, though, here, Justin, because, again, he's in a good position points-wise. Just don't wreck the car, right? If I was him, I'd probably pull over, but Liam Sheen's a wheeler, and I don't think he has any intention to pull it over. Just makes you a little bit nervous. Oh, he gets into him, a slide. What a save. 3 wide for position 6, and it is Arjuna on the outside who will take away P6.
And the car's still clean, even with a bit of a bumper tap for Arjuna, taking advantage of all that. And if they want to fight like that, why not? They're fighting each other so hard that they completely didn't even realize he was coming running by to take over 6th.
Not a clue, as they were all over each other in turn 4. He snuck by on the outside. Watch this. The 6 drives it in, gets in the Sheen. It's a great save, but then there goes Arjuna using all that extra pavement on the left-hand side. It set him up great for the entry into 5. Those guys are still sliding to this point, and it's going to allow Arjuna, I think, to pull away in that number 6 position. They're going to continue to fight for 7th and 8th, though. Sheen has still got it. Harris still wants it. This time by, they will see 6 laps to go. There's more fun. Winemaster has joined the party. Here comes Harris to the inside in turn number 1. The heartburn turn. Sheen on the outside hangs on, but Winemaster with a significant advantage. He's got 5 lap better tires than Harris, 10 lap better tires than Sheen.
And he might be in the good situation to make the move. No, he's going to move him. Hit the right rear quarter panel of Cody Harris's car to get him loose.
And Winemaster going to struggle, and 2 wide goes Harris. He is very fortunate that he was able to get that car back on track. When you get those left tires in the grass there, it is very easy to slide into the tires, and somehow he's going to throw a counter punch. Harris will go back underneath the 48 car. This is great news for Liam Sheen, who will pull away. Do we have another high-speed game of chicken? No. Jaron Winemaster will brake early, let the 6 car in line. He'll reset and try again. I think he'll be hard-pressed to hold off Jaron Winemaster here for the next 5 laps because of the tire disadvantage. And now Sam Nieto's getting a little bit closer. Adam de Blasio, Rhett McBride not that far off either.
Yeah, this is prime positions up for grabs now with Cody Harris fighting so hard. When they were side-by-side, Sheen and Harris, they lost themselves 4 seconds, keep in mind. But here comes the send from Winemaster. He needs to find a way around with those fresher tires. Sheen again hit the wall, though, as they're starting to drift to the corner.
Oh, and Winemaster nearly that time got up and into the 6. Very similar to some of the bits of contact we saw between the 6 and the 1. Winemaster just got squeezed out up against the inside wall. Now they'll race down this little back straightaway chute. 6 cars got the better entry, but it's all about going wide here to set up for the second right-hander, turn number 6. Sheen is not able to get away. Arjuna has. He's pulled about 5 seconds, so Arjuna is gone from this battle and has a really good chance to hang on to a P6 in this race. He's the biggest mover so far in the SimSeats 205K at the Roval, up 10 from where he started in P16.
And you want to hear the funny thing, too, with the comparison he thought about before? Guess where DeBenedetto finished in the Real World Roval race on Sunday?
I'm going to guess
6.
P6.
Yes, yes. So he nailed the
Called
prediction.
a shot, man. He thought he was wrong when we told him that's a top 10 prediction. I think he was on the money the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, he's got talent like we talked about, and he's definitely shown he might have a knack at driving stock cars on road courses. Let's put it that way. But this battle, oh boy, it's still not over because Harris again has somehow found a way back to Sheen after Sheen lost half a second last time.
And Nieto and de Blasio are right there. So there are 5 cars, 4 position. It's a battle for 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. They are separated by only a second and a half inside of what is 4 laps to go in this race. Of course, top left will say 3 to go. That's because Matt Danson is not that far behind this group from lapping them. So they will have to come to 3 to go next time by. Danson's already taken that marker. That's why you see 3 to go in the top left. Danson's lead is an incredible 26 seconds But this right here is what we want to watch to the checkered flag. Will there be another big move with a couple of playoff drivers needing points in the middle of all of this?
It looks like right now everyone's just waiting for somebody to make a mistake before they take the massive send. There was a bit of a mistake in the backdrop. Nieto and de Blasio just swapped spots, all while Harris wants the spot back from Sheen. He's trying it again.
The one car is going to move that defensive line, and he's going to make the onus on the 6. He wants the 6 of Harris to have to make a move to, be the one to take that risk. Liam Sheen does not want to leave a door open for him. And there's the 6 car looking to the bottom, and again, there just isn't room right here. Kind of a weird part of the track with those concrete walls there, the pit lane blend. It's just really not a good passing opportunity. Right here's where we've seen some mistakes. When drivers go wide, right, way out to the grass, looks like everybody's in control, and I'm not convinced that this is done yet. That 6 car, Harris, stalking, looking to the inside. There's no room. Now he'll get alongside, but Sheen's got the inside for the left-hander. He clears in turn 7. Winemaster to the inside in turn number 8. The 6 car will have the run to hold him off. Great stuff here in the top 10.
And if you're Winemaster, this has to be frustrating knowing how much pressure your tires are. How about 11 laps fresher than Liam Sheen? All he needs to do is find a way around the 6, and it might be an easier time against Liam Sheen. But the amount of pinching that's been amongst these cars is not giving them any inches to work with one another. It's going to come down to a mistake, possibly. Oh, by the way, the 88 of Freenosh still has yet to pit 2.
He has gone 54 laps. He has not pitted at all tonight. He is not alone. Washington, Schmidt, and Whitaker also have not pitted one single time. And by the way, Andrew Freenosh is in a battle for second because Agnew Phillip has caught him as those drivers are looking for the white flag. Here's Winemaster under the 6. He gets to the door of Cody Harris, who carries speed off the corner to stay in front, and the white flag is now in the air for Matt Danson.
What a drive for Danson, to say the very least. How dominant it's been. Keep in mind, just about a fifth of the racetrack up, you still have all those fights, and then you still have Freenosh trying to hold on to second place. Agnew Phillip has kept the pressure up, but just hasn't been able to find the run either to get around the multiple-time champion.
And can Agnew Phillip get the job done? We'll follow all of this through to the checkered flag. As they enter the infield portion of the road course, Freenosh's advantage grows. He's about a second ahead of Phillip, and now it looks like it may take a mistake for the 94 to get one more. But how about Matt Danson? Had a challenge in this round, did not run good through the last couple of races, struggled at Talladega, found himself in a hole, but he came into his wheelhouse. He was 3 for 3 on road courses entering tonight. But this will be the biggest win of his RSR Cup Series career. Final time through the front stretch chicane. Matt Danson wins at the Roval and advances into the round of 8 to keep his hunt for a SimSeats RealSimRacing Cup Series title alive. What a drive for the 05. He'll win it by some 28 seconds, Justin, as Phillip has got 2 more looks.
What a drive for Danson. Absolute domination tonight, but for Andrew Freenosh, very precise on his movements once more. Able to hold on in front of this battle for Phillip, keeping a nice solid distance to round out the podium.
So they hang on, and how about the battle for 7th on back? They are not done yet. Liam Sheen and company. Arjuna Kankipati misses the bus stop on the back straightaway. He has to slow down to serve a time penalty. Will he be able to reaccelerate to hang on to P6? I think he will. Here comes Harris. He's going to try to wind it up. They've made contact in the front stretch chicane before. Does it happen again? Sheen drives it in deep. Harris overcooks it. Sheen hangs on for 7th. Behind them, Nieto with a huge mistake. And Adam de Blasio scores a critical point and somehow finishes in the top 10.
What a finish for some of these drivers. Absolute madness through the final quarter. You can tell how hard some of these drivers wanted to push there, but what a dominating performance for Matt Danson. He nailed the strategy, he nailed the pace, and absolutely just ran away from the field as he gets to celebrate in the grass.
It is a well-deserved celebration for Matt Danson, who will lock himself into the round of 8 courtesy of the race win. It is his 4th career RSR Cup Series win, therefore 4th win on 2021, and he now ties Brandon Bowie for 2nd most wins on the year. Only Freenage has more than those two with his 6. Take a look top to bottom at your SimSeats full race results, and then we'll go trackside and talk with the drivers involved in this exciting race in just a moment. Matt Danson's final margin of victory is 28.3 seconds, probably about as long as he's been doing that burnout on the front straightaway. Ahead of Andrew Freenage, who comes home in 2nd without a single pit stop. Just to think, we were wondering, couldn't you do a one-stopper? Freenage goes the distance. We'll talk with him as well as Agnil Phillip in 3rd. All those drivers, I believe, advancing into the next round of the playoffs. We'll await for those to be official, though, in just a little bit. Brandon Bowie comes home 4th, and Zach Carr rounds out your top 5. And how about Arjuna Kankipati, 6th position for Artifact Racing, powered by RaceSpot in his RSR debut. What a drive for our in-race supporter. He beats out some of the best in the road racing game here at RSR, including Liam Sheen, who finishes 7th, Cody Harris at 8th position, Jaron Winemasters 9th, and again, what a recovery for Adam de Blasio.
Absolutely, all the way back to 10th position. Sam Nieto, right where he started in 11th spot. Rhett McBride in 12th. Brandon 6th, up and down tonight to 13th. He finished with Michael O'Brien, the last driver in the lead lap, in 14th. Trey Browning quietly to 15th position tonight. Nick Silver to 16th, with David Washington quietly gaining a few spots at the end of the race to 17th. Chris Rabel 18th, William Smith in 19th, and Whitaker rounds out your top 20.
Continuing on down through Ross Cato, a lap down, rounds out through 21st position. Joe Yakes is 22nd, Kyle Kamer 23rd, Sean Casto 24th, and those are all the drivers who finished on the lead lap. Running in this race, the DNFs will go to Joseph Tyson 25th, Seth Emergent 26th, Jeremy Miller 27th, and Brian Chambliss in the number 28 position. That's a look top to bottom at your SimSeats full race results. Since 2009, SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high quality, made in the USA driving simulators, including motion systems, complete turnkey iRacing packages, and custom fabrication. Their customer base includes all racers from the amateur to the pro ranks, and everyone on the SimSeats team is a weekend racer too. Their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Join SimSeats for the thrill of racing at any time, in any car, and on any track by visiting sim-seats.com to learn more information. It is a walk-off win for Matt Danson here tonight for the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway. We are stood by with the driver of the 05 Toyota. Now, Matt, congratulations on the win. You understood the assignment coming into this one, right? A deficit in the standings, needing a win, and you remain perfect on the road courses, but 28 seconds may be one of your most dominant yet.
Yeah, I was very nervous coming in. I was just saying to Agnel before, as much as I say my silly things and all that sort of deal, I've got a lot of self-doubt. So I was just waiting for, either am I going to make some sort of mistake that's going to cost me, or is someone going to pop up, someone fast like Zach or Liam, Andrew, like anyone could sort of pop up and be really fast. And I mean, if I made a mistake in quality, that could have been it right there. But yeah, I was very happy to to execute. And I felt like I'm a little bit disappointed because I was almost somewhat faultless, but the end of my outlap, I almost ended it all. Matt Mara style into the pit barrels. So
we saw that one.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah, so my heart was in my throat at that moment, but thankfully gathered it up, It took me about probably a lap or two even to really, get my head back together. But after that, yeah, it was just a matter of hitting the marks and bringing it home.
Of course, you continue your quest to look for a SimSeats RealSimRacing Cup Series Championship, and after having just survived, the likes of Talladega, really, which puts you at the back end with a 39th place finish. We go into an intermediate at Texas to kick things off, right? You were kind of mid-pack there at Las Vegas, started top 10 but finished 21st. You got a short track in there, obviously coming up in a couple of weeks to close it out at Martinsville, but Kansas and Texas to start it off. Those are that low horsepower, intermediate tracks. What can you find now as, of course, the cut gets much tougher now, aiming to be in the top 4?
I don't know. If you got any ideas, just let me know. Message me.
I'm not the guy to ask.
I don't know. Vegas, I was right there. At the end, I probably should have come away. Yeah, I don't know, maybe just outside the top 5, I think, with the way I think I played the wrong strat at the end, that last little restart. But, and then got caught up in a wreck on the coming through turn 4 in the last lap. So, very easy to turn a top 5 or top 10 into a P30 or, whatever within a corner. So I guess main thing will be just to be consistent and stay out of trouble. Somewhere like Martinsville, that'll probably be hard, but and then like you say, Texas, everyone's gonna be on top of each other as well. So I don't know, just same sort of thing here. I guess I just got to try and make sure I'm doing the right moves, not dumb moves, and putting myself in a position to succeed and execute from there. And hopefully it all works out.
Able to do that tonight from the Roval. Saw that car up front early and then didn't see much of it because you were about a half a lap out of most of the camera shots. So for all the people on that car, who you want to say hi to?
Yeah, we're in the stealth scheme tonight. Switched across to the Camry for this one just to give that a go, but it seemed to bring me some luck. But obviously, big shout out to Logitech G, Astro Gaming, Virtual Racing School, Cube Controls, Racetech Seats, and Sam Blacklock Media, and Owned Live as well for all your streaming needs. But of course, a big shout out to you guys. A bit sad now that I won't get to see myself on the broadcast, but by the sounds of things. But at least at the start and the end, I'll get to see that beautiful stealthy scheme. So big shout out to you guys and everyone who makes this all happen. Thank you.
And don't worry, we did catch you nearly going through the barrels and showed multiple angles, so you get to see the car in that one. It works out in the end. Matt, appreciate you being a part of this series here on a Monday nights. Congratulations on the win, and we'll catch you in the round of 8. Your race winner tonight in the SimSeats 205K at the Roval. Justin will continue on down the pit lane. Second place goes to Andrew Freenosh, minus a single pit stop. He's able to go the distance here with the driver of the 88 machine.
Yes, indeed. Andrew Freenosh now joining us in the broadcast booth, holding on to second position much of the way this evening. First things first, Andrew, how are you feeling about the run tonight, P2?
Yeah, good to have you back, Justin. I didn't know you were calling. Great to hear your voice. It's a road course. Come in tonight. We had a good points lead. We were just trying to see if maybe we could spoil Danson, but he was just way too good. So just kind of rode in second. I think we were probably a 4th place car. I know Brandon did the 2-stopper and Seth had his problems, but I think they're both faster than me. Circumstance came where we were able to pass Brandon there, and like I said, Seth had his problems, and we kind of walked into a second. But got to give it up to Danson. I think he's the best road course racer we've seen in this league, and he just keeps proving it. So didn't have anything for him. Got to go back to the drawing board, but thank God we're done with road courses for this year.
I want to ask this as well real quickly, because we were talking about this and the data at some parts was showing no stops. Is that correct or no?
We did 1 stop.
That's what I was thinking when trying to double and triple check there. But what were the thoughts trying to go into the strategy to try and make sure you timed that up right with the amount of fall off for some drivers being 4 seconds, for Matt Danson somehow being 3?
Yeah, the strategy was kind of just pit it halfway, unless we were close enough to Matt to leapfrog him and pit early, but that just wasn't the case. So, just get a good run. pit right at halfway and go from there. I did, so you guys probably didn't see it, but I will admit I did self-spin coming off pit road. The tires are a little light, so that did kind of mess me up.
Okay, so that may have explained the data discrepancy. That may have not registered the stop being full 360 then. Okay, on that mark though, round of 8 up next. Trying to continue a dynasty of championships in this series. The competition level, extremely high. Texas, Kansas, Martinsville, your approach for the round of 8.
I don't know. If Texas and Kansas or anything like Vegas was, it's a crapshoot. You might as well go plate racing. So Martinsville I love, but man, if we get a caution fest or late race shenanigans there, it's tough. So I don't know. We've done this the last 4 years. We made the Final Four. We've won the last 3 years, but I think this year is it's so just open with the tracks the way they are, and I'm just happy to be in the Final 8. We'll see. The mile and a halves, if we can make it through that, I'll feel comfortable in the Martinsville, but you don't know what you're going to get. If it's plate racing like we saw kind of at Vegas, anybody can and will win. If we get spread out a little bit, maybe green flag runs, I do feel comfortable at Texas and Kansas. We did win at Kansas early in the year, but everything's up in the air. I don't really know what to expect.
Strong run for you tonight, Andrew. Congratulations on the second place finish, Andrew.
Thanks so much.
Andrew Freenosh coming home in P2 tonight. Started off in the 4th position, and now Cam comes away with the narrow top 3 finish on the season. Right behind him was Agnell Phillip, who showed a lot of raw pace at the end of the runs in particular tonight. Agnell Phillip doing what he needed to try and do in the A51 Pro machine to try and move on to the top 3. He now joins us here in our RaceSpot TV broadcast booth. Agnell Phillip now with us. Agnell, first things first. Stellar drive, especially lone room pace. How was that like when it came to the pace?
You know, I've been doing a ton of races this week. I've done a couple of NIS, NASCAR iRacing Series races, so I've done a lot of long runs. Kind of new just to keep, especially the rear tires on it for the whole run, and you know, it kind of worked out. I got a little jumbled at the beginning. I'll take responsibility for that. I was probably going a little slower than I needed to, but you know, we recovered, and I believe we've made it. But barring something that I haven't accounted for, I think I did what I needed to do today.
And just got the confirmation that yes, you are in.
Awesome.
So now it becomes the big question. What would that approach be like now for the round of 8 for you, knowing there's a couple mile and a halves, but also the mayhem track on iRacing known as the Paperclip, Martinsville?
Yeah, at this point, I think, that we'll let the chips fall where they do. I'm going to do the best I can. The mile and a half this year have been very much hit or miss for me. We've had races like Kansas and Atlanta where, I've run up front and had chances to win those races. And then we've had races like both Las Vegas where, something or the other happens. So, at this point, I think, it's just the nature of this format. Anything can happen. We're getting wins is very difficult in this series, so can't count on that. So, we'll just do the best we can. We'll see where we're at the end of Martinsville. But yeah, Martinsville is definitely going to be a hectic, stressful race for everybody, I'm sure.
And of course, the past year in particular has been a busy one sim racing wise, because on top of your work and of course getting your major start in high level competition sim racing wise in RSR, amongst those competitors who is trying to push on with your respective team in the Road to Pro side of things in round 2 in particular, how would you describe your progress going from where you were about a year or so ago to now with the speed you've now showcased?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride. I mean, I'm, grateful that I have made some good friends on this service and had good, mentors and teammates and kind of people I've raced around, like even, like Drew and Everhart and Matt Danson and others that have really pushed me to get better. And yeah, I think iRacing is really about, how much effective practice can you put in, and I've found a lot of space and time to be able to do that in the last year, and it's good to see that it's paying off. And I really do feel like even from the start of this season, so even from February, that my pace is miles better on pretty much every track. So whereas maybe at the beginning of the year it might have been I don't know if I'm cut out to be in the top 4 and make a serious challenge for the championship. Now I think I can do it on pace, which is cool, and I hope to kind of keep that momentum going.
Congratulations on the strong run tonight, Agnell.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Agnell Phillip rounds out your top 3 tonight. I'd like to thank him, Andrew Freenosh, and Matt Danson for taking the time to speak with us, Evan.
Yeah, let's bring in our in-race reporter one final time because I think Arjuna deserves a little bit of love in this one. It ends up being a P6 finish, the biggest mover. You had no faith. You were worried about Jaron coming up through, and the guys in front of each other, or in front of you, were too busy trying to wreck each other, and you were able to sneak on by and tell us about the end there.
Did you see the 3 wide?
Oh, we saw it. I couldn't do side by side by side, but I did say 3 wide.
Yeah, that was a moment. I kind of knew that I had to make it happen. By the way, you can say hello to my dog, who I heard made an appearance on the broadcast earlier. But yeah, I knew that I had to try something there, and I didn't want to get stuck because I knew Winemaster was coming, so I sent it. Licked the stamp and really went around the outside, which I wasn't feeling the most comfortable about, but it worked. And yeah, honestly, Evan, I got to thank you for letting me do this, because I had a lot of fun, a lot more fun than I kind of expected from the practice times. And yeah, really solid group of guys and a really fun race there.
Hey, Justin, he was nervous coming into this one. He was saying, I should have done more practice, and he did all right.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, too, Arjuna, I want to mention this. We talked about the comparison of wanting to perform like Matt DiBenedetto. Do you remember which position he finished yesterday?
Yes, I literally did the DiBenedetto, including busting through the chicane a couple of times on the back straightaway. So I'm pretty impressed with my predictions there, and I'm glad I didn't put the RaceSpot TV commentator's curse down on myself, because that would have been unfortunate. I heard you were saying some nice things about me, Justin, and I'm glad you didn't put the curse on me either.
Absolutely, but I have to ask as well then, too, you mentioned the transition from sports cars to stock cars, also some of your open wheel experience. What would it be in turn then like for you, say, to compete more? Should we see more of you then in a stock car now after this experience?
If Evan will let me do more road course races next year, and as long as I don't have more broadcasts, because that's the problem with Mondays here at RaceSpot. They're busy. We had IndyCar for a couple of seasons before this. That was, always clashing with this. You and I, we do the Lionheart Speedway series on Mondays as well. So there's always something that's happening on RaceSpot here on Monday. So as long as I'm free, as long as I like the next-gen car on a road course, and as long as Evan's happy to have me in my what will surely be a more eclectic paint on the next-gen car, I'm happy to come and do more of these.
I think we need a full season campaign out of him.
Yes, I was about to say, I want to see him on a speedway.
Yeah, we need some oval races.
You don't, unless we're going to convince Dylan Coyle, in which case I will do it just so that I can prove definitively that Sheets is better than Wawa.
Well, I remember that battle with Steve, and Dylan almost won an IROC championship. So be careful poking the bear, because he didn't do that bad.
He's too busy now living his childhood dream out. So, I would love to be racing with him. It's unlikely, but yeah, I don't think you should trust me on the speedways. I mean, Evan, you and I have commentated on some of these RSR races before, and I forget which one. I think it must have been either Martinsville or Bristol. I forget how many cautions we had there. I would have been probably the cause of about half of them, though.
If it's the Martinsville race from last year, that one had like 21.
Oh, okay, so 21, yeah.
So keep you out of the race if we're not trying to break the record, is what you're saying?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying right now.
Well, the Winter Series is going to have a couple of road courses. By the way, I'll use this as a plug. Yes, the Winter Series registration will open tomorrow for active Cup Series drivers. The schedule will also be announced tomorrow. I will confirm that we will be going back to Montreal for a road race in the Winter Series, so maybe some interest in that one.
Yeah, I can knock down the wall of champions despite not being a champion. I can do that pretty well.
Well, you kept it clean tonight, so I got faith in you. So we'll give you the chance. Hey, you got sponsors on the shirt. I mean, thought maybe we'll get you in a RaceSpot TV racing shirt at some point with our faces on the back and all that, but we'll give you the chance. Why not? Who do you want to say hi to?
Well, my teammates and everyone who was watching on my stream. I haven't streamed for a long time. And because of some very nice people who raided me today, I had 100 people watching me. I was scared. I didn't want to crash. So thanks for everyone who hung out with me during today's race. And thanks to the team at RaceSpot who helped, obviously, you, Evan, put all of this on. Thanks to you for letting me be a part of it. And yeah, since I'm not commentating, I think I can plug something for RaceSpot, which is you can now join us on YouTube. $2.99 a month. Join the Blame Club. Get some emojis. You'll get Evan's face as an emoji shortly if we get enough members joining us up. Behind the scenes looks, all sorts of interesting things. So yeah, join us, hit that button down below. You can also subscribe to us, that red button right below it. And yeah, join us at RaceSpot. Lots of interesting things coming up to close off 2021.
You had me sold on my emoji. Ladies and gentlemen, that is top 10 RSR Cup Series finisher and RaceSpot's own Arjuna Kankipati. Arjuna, thanks for coming out, man. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.
All right, Justin, let's talk points coming out of this race and kind of reset, right? I'm just going to look at the points and read them off. So, of course, Danson advances with the win. Daniel Eberhard had previously advanced with the race win at Las Vegas. So the bubble driver becomes Brandon Bowie. He's in. So Danson, Freenosh, Sheen, and Eberhard, along with de Blasio, Silver, Phillip, and Bowie, all advance into the round of 8. Michael Araya, -8 points, is eliminated. McBride at -10 is also eliminated. Rabel and Nieto eliminated from the playoffs here in the round of 12. We'll analyze that in a minute, but first let's talk about this race. Thought that we get about a third of the way through this one. Danson's starting to pull away. Thought things were going to simmer down a little bit, right? That was a great race, especially at the end with everything happening. The Roval continues to be a really fun place to have a road course race in a stock car.
Absolutely, especially with a lot of the places where, with its tightness, you need to be willing to, as we've seen, make some contact and make some very bold moves. And in the case of Arjuna doing 3 wide down in the infield, be willing to take a 3 wide if everyone's having a wrestling match around you. But in that regard, it was absolutely entertaining, especially in the mid-pack. But overall, Danson just absolutely dominated long run pace. He seems to have that magical feeling when it comes to saving tires for the second half of the run, and he really utilized every single part of that pace needed tonight to secure the win.
Now, he continued to get better and better as the night win. You're familiar with a lot of these RSR names. What do you make of the 8 that have advanced on through and the 4 that get sent home?
Very talented when it comes to this entire grouping, first of all, especially with Eberhard, with Phillip in there, with Freenosh, and of course, you throw in Sheen and Danson. You have at least 5 star-studded drivers, and then you have some great drivers who have put on some good drives with the season, as you mentioned, de Blasio. He's really impressed me tonight with that recovery drive in particular. Silver, he looked pretty quick tonight as well at times, and he's had some decent momentum as well. It's going to be intriguing, though, who actually makes the round of 4 for the championship, because there are, honestly, could be all 8 of them who could make a solid case of saying, I can be the champion. They've all got good resumes in the series and across the service. So it could be a toss-up of who makes it, and it's, I think, in turn going to be about who's able to stay out of a major crash, and as well, making sure you don't have to rely on Martinsville, because the thing about that paperclip is, you mentioned the 21 cautions, I could see it coming down to the bump and run even, if it comes to that case, for that type of a race, if it comes down to the situation, which I think might come into play.
I'm just looking at, race win-wise, I'm trying to do quick math, which isn't good sometimes, but 21 race wins of 26 races this year are still in these playoffs. So the best of the best are rising to the occasion. They are in the mix here. But I said it very early on as they take a look at the, their schedule. I thought that the first round was probably the hardest, right? Just because it's all short tracks, and short tracks have historically been the places where things get wild, right? I mean, that 3 combo punch of Darlington, Richmond, and Bristol's tough. But let's look at the round of 8, bottom right of your screen. And you heard it from Andrew Freenosh, second place finisher tonight. He's worried about the intermediate tracks, right? Texas, Kansas, those are racetracks where historically maybe a little bit of a safer option, right? You kind of know what you get going into those races. But the way that the intermediates race in 2021 NASCAR Cup car racing is not, your grandparents' intermediate racing. It is very high pressure. There is very minimal room for mistakes. Cars are on top of each other. And I think that Texas and Kansas could give our playoff drivers just as many problems as Martinsville. So I don't think there's a safe option in this round.
Yeah, this round is very intriguing in turn, absolutely, because I'm more concerned still about Martinsville because of its nature of incidents. But you bring up the good point of Texas and Kansas being, they drive a bit different in mile and a half circuits. They're the high downforce, low horsepower packages where you have to be good at managing the tires with a lengthy amount of on throttle time in turn. And that balance is so difficult. And there's still the chance, more so Texas, I think you see a bit of a breakaway, not so much, say, as we've seen at the Roval tonight. But the main thing that comes up to mind as well is who's going to be able to get themselves clean air? Who's going to be able to make sure they don't burn up their tires? Who, in turn, will qualify well enough to put themselves in the conversation right from the get-go in the race? And how will the cautions fly? Those are all conversation points that you have to consider when planning out how you're going to approach that race. And if I'm some of these drivers, if I want to win the championship, you got to be able to get a feel of how that setup is going to be, first of all, and two, get a ton of practice put on in, because the best at all levels, eNASCAR, RSR, anywhere on iRacing, you have to put in the prep.
And looking at some of our previous intermediate race winners,